Hello and welcome everybody to lesson 1 of our Diploma in Mobile App Development here at Shaw Academy. So first of all, I would like to give you a huge welcome to everything here at Shaw Academy. It's fantastic for you to join us this evening. So today's lesson is why make mobile apps. We're going to take a look at some figures and statistics to get us thinking about the importance of mobile apps in today's world, how we can take advantage of that importance, and then getting you started on your development journey. I am Ushing, your mobile app development educator. But before we begin today's lesson, and if everyone can hear me, please do type in where you are listening from. A huge welcome to you all. So before we begin, let's just do a very quick little bit of housekeeping to get everyone introduced to me here at Shaw Academy, to our team here at Shaw Academy, and to the education process here at Shaw Academy overall. So we've South Africa popping in there, Ireland, Loxton there saying hello, Cohen saying hello as well. Fantastic stuff. So let us begin. I am Usheen, okay, it's pronounced Usheen as you can see there. I do have an honours degree in computer science and I have quite a bit of development experience at this stage. I have worked at university level before, so you guys are in very safe hands for the next 8 lessons, which will take 4 weeks. We'll have 2 lessons a week. Daniel from Ireland popping in, Hudson, Ohio, and a Cliff there in the UK. Brilliant to see you all here. I am a full-on mad developer and a huge fan of elevator music as well. And say hello as well in the chat box, which is down at the bottom right, just to say hello to our fantastic support team as well, who are here to support you and help you develop successful apps. So before we get to going, let's just very quickly run through a quick bit of housekeeping, as I said, and then I will answer your questions after that if they haven't already been answered. So welcome to your live webinar. So for anyone who may have missed the FAQ slides earlier, you can interact live with me through the chat box down there at the bottom right. So you're all on mute at the moment so that you can only hear my voice, and you have a comment box where you can type in the questions and interact with me live. So if you, a lot of people there saying where they're from, James in UK, Florida, popping in South Africa, watching on an iPad, brilliant stuff. Ola there from Vernon. So a lot of you have already found the comment boxes already, and I will answer questions at the end of the webinar during our Q&A session, but our support team will do their best to reply to all the comments coming in during the lesson. You will not be able to see other users' questions either, as that will get a bit chaotic, as you can imagine. And I want everyone to get really familiar with your members area, as it's incredibly important for your journey through this course. This is where you're going to find the lesson recordings, the assignments, course toolkits, and much more. So to log in, go to shawacademy.com, and at the top right hand corner you can log in to your members area. Please do get very familiar with your course area there. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just go to shawacademy.com and your members area is there. You'll find your lesson recordings. We do upload each live lesson within 24 hours of the lesson, assignments each week, course toolkits, and a lot more. So as you can see there, it's all there for you, and you will see the recorded lessons from tomorrow on, and I showed you where it would appear in your members area. So this is where you will find all that. To click on the lesson, it will pop up the latest recording. So watch the most recent lesson at the top of your members area, will be the most recent lesson, and to view another lesson, just click on the lesson title at the bottom there. Perfect. So I do have quite a special announcement as well. During lesson 5, we'll be announcing the winner of a very exciting competition. One of you lucky students will get your hands on 12 months premium membership to Shaw Academy absolutely free. So how exciting is that, guys? One of you will get a 12-month premium membership. All you have to do is attend the live lessons, and I would stress that attending live, it provides the best experience. It is interactive, it is engaging, and our live attendings do have a far higher completion rate than those who only do the recordings. So our course agenda, let's just run through very quickly the course agenda and what we will be covering over the next 4 weeks, the next 8 lessons. So it's divided into 8 lessons. In week 1, we'll be looking at why make mobile apps, today's lesson, and each lesson is a stepping stone and you will gain a lot from each lesson. The aim is to equip you with a solid foundation in mobile app development to help you create successful apps. Lesson 2 is who is your audience? Again, very important, and you will see that when we get to that lesson. Week 2 is when we will start with coding for beginners. If you do have previous development experience, please do bear with us and maybe a bit of a refresher. We'll be using new software that you may not be familiar with, and so there's plenty of valuable information there for you. Lesson 4, we will be looking at the development lifecycle. So for me, development is all about planning. If you do not plan, you won't get anywhere. As the saying goes, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So that is why we want to go through the development lifecycle and talk about planning. Storing data, week 3, we'll start off with lesson 5, storing data with apps. So again, if you want to store anything, you will need to learn how to store data and attend this lesson. Lesson 6, we'll look at publishing your app, which is one of the final stages of development and really important that you do attend that lesson live. And then week 4, we'll start off with lesson 7, making money in mobile, which I'm sure you are all very, very interested in. At the end of the day, you should be rewarded for the hard work and dedication you've put into developing an app, and we'll look at the different ways that you can generate revenue from a mobile app in this lesson. And then the final lesson is development analysis, where we'll be looking at how you can improve your app after you've released it. So at the end of this course, you will have a solid foundation in the processes, logic, and concepts of mobile app development, allowing you to create successful apps. So let's have a look at today's agenda and what we will be covering in today's lesson. And if you do have any questions, do type them into the chat box and the comment box as the lesson goes on. So I am sure you already have a good idea why to make mobile apps, and that is why you are attending live. But what I want to do is put it into the context of the mobile app ecosystem and how users engage with mobile apps and devices. So doing this, it's going to provide you with information that you can use to help you develop the best possible app and give it the best chance at it being successful. Now we're talking the competition. Very good, very good. Each of the lessons will be 60 minutes long. Each of the lessons will be 60 minutes long. So we had our bit of housekeeping. I will be talking about our mad agenda. So we will have a look at why our app's so important. As I've said, I want to put development into a larger context. Development doesn't happen in a vacuum, and you need to understand that to develop a successful app. It's not just your idea that makes your app successful. It is also keeping in mind the context that your app is coming into and accounting for that when developing. We will get you started then with your mobile app development journey and the first steps along that journey. So, and then our summary and a Q&A at the end. So I very quickly want to talk about the mad agenda. So this is what we will be covering in these 4 weeks, over the next 4 weeks and 8 lessons. And we will be going through roughly the 3 stages that all mobile apps go through. So we'll be starting with design this week. Why exactly are we designing? What are we designing for? And then going further with that, who are we designing for? And the processes involved behind design. And from experience, this is an extremely important stage of mobile app development. It's not only the graphical design of your app, but also the design of the structure of your app, from navigation to information and everything in between. Having a good structure to the entire development process is extremely important. Otherwise, you can lose track. It can waste time and resources. Then we're going to be looking at development over the next 2 weeks. What we're going to be developing with, how we will develop, and strategies to monetize what we've developed. And finally, we'll look at different distribution strategies to give your app the best chance at succeeding. And then finally, the publishing process as well. So this is what we will be covering over the next 4 weeks. And this is roughly the 3 stages that every mobile app goes through. And over the next 4 weeks, we're going to bring you through each of these stages to give you a solid grounding in mobile app development and the processes surrounding it. So it's not just all about coding, guys, and I hope by the end of the course you will think about the mobile app world in a different way. And if there are some questions that I'm not answering right at this moment, guys, it's because I will be covering them later on in the lesson, and I don't want to repeat myself too much. So is everyone ready to get going with today's lesson? So each of you has taken the first step towards becoming a successful mobile app developer. By showing up today, you are taking control and you are on the path to developing successful apps. And to achieve this, keep on showing up to the live lessons. Attending live is, as I've said, guys, very fun and engaging, and our live attendees do have a higher completion rate than those who only do the recordings. And again, you will be entered into that competition draw by attending live, so don't forget that as well. What is Mad Agenda? The mobile app development agenda that we will be covering over the next 4 weeks. Will lesson notes be provided, or do we take them? I will talk about that at the end, Dane. No need to get nervous, Vernon. So let's get going with today's lesson and our first step on our mobile app development. So why are apps so important? And we'll kick off today by taking a look at that. And I'm pretty sure you all already have a good idea, but as I said, I do want you to start thinking about the mobile app ecosystem as a whole, and the world that your app will be coming into creation in. Now, I'm running through this because you do need to think about the context that your app is coming into. It's no use running full tilt into development and not understanding the mobile app world and the context of that world. So every bit of information is important, and mobile app development, compared to other software development roles, isn't just about coding and programming. It's also about having a good understanding of the mobile app world and ecosystem so that you can use every little bit of information at your disposal to give your app idea the best chance. So these are times spent on major media, and we are spending more time on our mobile devices than ever before, spending much more time than we are on even laptops, TVs, anything like that. So this graph is representative, but as you guys are, I'm sure, are aware, mobile devices are far ahead, even over computers at that stage. So I do want to give you some statistics to really think about how integrated mobile apps and mobile devices are in our life. So 2016, October, for the first time, more web visits came from mobile than they did from laptops or desktops. So that is more web visits from mobile than desktops or laptops. And that is a huge number, guys. Lewis, it is possible to ask questions if you're participating live, and I can see your question there. So that is a huge number, guys. That is more than half, and it has only grown since then. But I want you to look at it in another perspective, which again will show you how much more time people do spend on their mobile devices than their laptops or their PCs. So 90% of the time is spent in apps rather than the browser. So all of these 51.3% of web visits was only in the 10% of time that was spent outside of apps. So the 51% is from people working through the browser. Now, for this instance, we are discounting the browser as an app. It is a browser in this case. So 90% of time is spent in apps, yet somehow in that 10% of time that is left, 51.3% of all web visits came from that. I think that is an absolutely crazy figure, and I just want to show you that to put mobile device usage into perspective. That from the 10% of time that is not spent in apps, that was spent in the browser, 51.3% of all web visits came from that. And what this boils down to is engagement. If you want users to spend a significant amount of time in your app, You need it to be engaging and keep users coming back again and again. So when we see that users spend 90% of their time in apps rather than just on the browser, we need to start thinking about why they do that and how you can design your app so that it can contribute to that 90% and you can take a portion of that. So these are all things you do need to keep in mind when developing. It can be very easy to get caught up with your app idea. And I would like to ask, who here actually has an app idea already? But you do need to take a step back every now and again and think about the statistics and how these statistics are achieved. So mobile apps are so important as well because they are an opportunity, and this is why you're all here. You all know that apps are an opportunity. So first of all, they can be an opportunity for business. And you may ask the question, how many businesses could benefit from having a mobile app? And I believe it is a much better question to ask yourself, how many businesses wouldn't benefit from having a mobile app? That is a much better question to ask yourself. How many businesses wouldn't benefit from having a mobile app? And it's all about engagement, as I've said. That is the way apps are designed. An app is designed and developed to streamline an experience and make the user's journey from point A to point B as smooth as possible. Which is quite important to keep in mind. And the way that mobile devices are used contribute to that as well. People have the phone, their tablet on them all the time compared to their PC, their desktop, which they may not. So it's all about engaging with the user, getting them to take their device out of their pocket to use your app. So as I've said, users spend 90% of their time in apps compared to the mobile web, yet still somehow that 10% contributed to 51.3% of all web visits. People spend a huge amount of time in apps, 4+ hours a day, in some countries more, in some countries less. And they add visibility to your business, engage with users where they are the most, which is on their device, and a good app will generate users and revenue through engaging with them. So is engagement above function in designing an app? Very good question, Marco. I want you to think about the function of your app and how you can make it as engaging as possible. They do tie in hand by hand, and they are hand in hand things you need to think about. They are parallels. You do need to think about engagement and functionality at the same time. And the live lesson will be uploaded as a recording within 24 hours. So, global mobile app revenue amounted to 51 billion in 2016 and is projected to generate 102 billion in revenue by 2020, which is madness. So what percentage of that, what even if it was only a tiny bit of that 102 billion or 102 billion, even if you only had a tiny percentage of that, that's still quite a bit of money. So it's not all business orientated either. So not to worry for all of you out there who just want to develop a couple of apps for yourself rather than integrating an app into your business. And I would mention something very quickly before we move on to the next slide. While apps can be great for your business, the apps that you develop can be a business in themselves. And you need to keep that in mind when designing, developing, and distributing. Just like businesses and the opportunities they create don't take place in a vacuum, neither do mobile apps, and it is really important to keep that in mind. So apps in day-to-day life. Let's have a look at some more facts and figures, which I will hope interest you guys and give you a broader perspective on mobile app development to get you thinking about what makes a successful app. And this is where apps come into their own. It's not just for businesses, though they can be great add-ons to a business and really help a business. A lot of times it can be for helping people in their day-to-day life. So first of all, how many people own a smartphone? Does anybody here have a guess how many people own a smartphone? So what do I mean when you say it's all about engagement? Engaging with the user, making the user take their phone out of their pocket and use your app. You need to engage with them, otherwise you will not be able to generate revenue, get users, and that is the most important thing to help you develop a successful app. 65% there from Bryden. If I am pronouncing that right, I do apologize. So 2.3% of all, or 2 out of 3 of all adults now own a smartphone, and there are 2.6 billion smartphone users worldwide, which is a huge amount. And I am a firm believer that apps can improve lives in 1,000 small ways that you wouldn't think about, and especially with the continued integration of apps into our daily lives. Maybe some of you have heard about the Internet of Things. This integration will continue. So the average user checks their phone 150 times a day. And that to me is a staggering amount, but I also believe it and see it daily. And they do this for a variety of reasons. They do it for better communication, social media, and their online presence. Because 50% of smartphone users grab their phone after waking up, straight away after waking up. So 50% of smartphone users grab their phone after waking up, which is huge amount. And you need to think about, again, how your app can engage with the user, what its function is, and how they can engage with the user as they go on. Leisure activities as well, organizing their lifestyle, and many, many more. So what gap does your app fill? What section of someone's life will your app fill? Will they use your app? Will they check your app when they wake up? Out of that 150 times a day, what section of that will be your app that the user is checking their phone for and using your app for? Because you need to think about this. How can you engage with the user? And it can be pretty easy when you think about it, because 87% of people always have their smartphone at their side, which means that it is possible for them to check your app and use your app very, very easily. Rather than them have to go log on online on a PC, on a desktop, whatever it may be. It is all about making your app accessible as possible. Now, with all of these options out there, it can be a bit difficult to think up of an app idea and what exactly you want your app to do. And when developing an app, you want that journey that the user is going to take when using your app to be as smooth and as streamlined as possible. So can anybody think how to do that? Well, rather than trying to create an app that fulfills too many functions, you want to fulfill one function really well. That way the user is going to use that app for that function again and again, rather than sporadically and very infrequently using one out of the 5 functions that your app fulfills. So it is all about engagement, and I will talk a lot more about that in later lessons. So to help with coming up with your app idea, you need to think of what apps should I make. And there are a couple of categories here that you can help out with. So Michelle, if you'd like to ask that in the Q&A, that would be fantastic, and I'll get to that at the end of the lesson. So we do have corporate apps, and these are apps that improve business with a company, and also an app that creates a new, easier way to interact with that business. So that is one type of app out there. Now these are rough categories, guys. You can cut across them if you wish. It's not 100%. You do not have to stick to these rigidly as you go on. There are facilitator apps as well, apps that specifically help people to do something they already do, and an app that provides a service in a more efficient way than before. Very good, Gerard. Focus on building a minimum viable product, and again we'll be talking about that in later lessons, but it's good to see you've got a good start. And then standalones as well, apps that sell on the strength of what they want to do, and an app that does something interesting or fun. So overall, while those are to give you an idea of what function your app should fulfill and how to categorize your app, There are no instructions overall. I want to give them to you so that you can see there are a variety of categories there, and it may help you focus the idea of your app, extract the functionality of your app in the best way possible, but there are no instructions, and you do decide overall. It is all up to you in regards to this. Brilliant stuff. So let's talk about starting your journey. And does anyone have any questions on that before we move on? So I hope that the facts and figures from the last couple of slides have sparked everyone's imagination and shown you what can be achieved with mobile apps, but also started to give you an idea of how successful apps are achieved and put the apps into a wider context, that is the mobile app world and ecosystem, and also that context of constant use, that people will check their phones on average 150 times a day, that they will 50% of users check their phone waking up, that 80% of users have their phone on them at all times. Generally, standalone apps are probably being created the most in regards to that. Ones that achieve something just by something on their own. Should apps be fully interactive or informative? They can be both grand. So there's no one way to go with it. So there's no one route to go down. So I hope if you've an app idea, you've seen how the information in the previous slides can help you refine that idea or modify it. And if you don't have an idea yet, that is no problem. Hopefully it has given you a starting point. So everyone seems to be okay for questions at the moment. And again, if I'm not answering the question at the moment, it's because we do have a lot of content to get through. I don't want to answer off-content questions. Our fantastic support staff will answer those questions. Fantastic. So let's talk about the MAD process, the mobile app development process. Because if you boil it down to a fundamental level, all development involves is creating something that solves a problem. Now, it doesn't have to be an earth-shattering problem, but even a to-do list helps someone organize themselves better. So all development involves is creating something that solves a problem. And there are steps in this process, in this mobile app development process, that you will need to follow. So first of all, you want to identify the problem. So this is going to be your app idea, and we'll be talking about how to flesh out your app idea, the problem it solves, near the end of the lesson. Since apps are on your phone, it means web will not be that irrelevant at all. So web will not be that relevant at all, and we will not be covering web at all in this course. So whatever your idea may be, it is going to solve a problem for someone. Maybe they didn't even know that they had that problem, but once your app is there, it can fulfill that gap in their app. So you do need to identify what the problem is, which pretty much is the function of your app. And maybe it's not a huge problem, but Flappy Bird, what that solves, the problem that solves is boredom, as you can see. So you do need to identify the problem, the functionality that your app is going to solve. The next stage then is to design a solution. So this is something that I'm going to cover in a lot more detail in lesson 4, and I would really advise please do attend that live, because it is very important that I want to see your questions and answer your questions as that lesson goes on for a very informative class. But just to fill you in very quickly, when I talk about designing a solution, I don't mean just the user interface. I mean the design of your app as a whole, how it will work, the structure of it. And this can be quite a broad topic, but the more planning and detail you do put into this stage, the easier the development stage is overall. Because once we have designed a solution, we can then write the application. And designing a solution can involve pretty much everything, and overall boils down to figuring out how your app is going to work, and it's all done through planning and analysis. And once that's done down to the last detail, we can then move on to writing the solution. Then writing the solution, this can just be following, or writing the application, this can just be following the solution that you've designed, and can be sometimes be the easiest stage, because what you're doing is you're following the solution and coding the steps out. And then finally, we've checked the solution. So testing. Overall, an app is made up of a list of instructions that tell the system what to do depending on a variety of factors. So, as we can see there, an app is made up of a list of instructions, and we're going to look at algorithms now in a second. But if we wanted to make some toast, we would take some bread and pop it in the toaster for a designated amount of time. That is a very simple instruction, but that is what you need to think about when you are designing a solution and writing up the application. There are no easy steps in regards to telling a computer what to do. You need to be very, very explicit in the instructions you give to a computer. They will not make leaps in logic. They will not fill in the details for you. You need to tell them what to do. That is what computers are for. They're there to carry out a task, but you do need to tell them what that task is, and that can be done through an algorithm, which is otherwise known as a list of instructions. There are a variety of methods of coding, Dwayne, and we'll be talking about them later on. So as we said, apps are a list of instructions. Individual lines of code are instructions to the system. But before we get to that stage, let's talk about algorithms. So very simply, an algorithm is a list of steps that will get you from A to B. It is the process that is going to be followed by the system. And it's always a very good idea to have an algorithm written out before starting out. And the more detailed, the better. And I'm going to say right off the bat that I am a huge fan of planning. And the more details you plan, the easier it makes development. The amount of times I have not put enough time and effort into planning, writing out steps, figuring out what I'm actually trying to do, and then at some point reach the crossroads, have to retrace my steps, redo code, sometimes scrap huge sections of code. Overall, planning is very important. So, the more details you have, the easier it makes development. And an algorithm is a list of steps to carry out a task. So this is quite important because, again, an application is a list of instructions. A list of steps is an algorithm. So we do want to figure out what we are trying to tell the system. So how to boil an egg. This is a classic example of an algorithm. But if you do want a bit of homework for yourself, try and write out the most detailed list of how to boil an egg. You may think pop an egg in some boiling water for 10 minutes. That would suffice. Sadly not. Again, you need to say get a saucepan from the cupboard, boil a kettle, fill the saucepan full of boiling water, stick it in the hob, turn on the hob, wait until the water is simmering, pop the egg in, maybe take the egg out of our fridge. As you can see, quite a simple task like boiling an egg quickly develops a lot of steps. And that is what you do need to keep in mind. That you cannot expect the device system, the computer, to figure out what you mean. You do need to give it that list of steps. So the more detailed you think about it, the more you break it down, the better for you, because again, you know what you are trying to tell the computer to do. So this follows on to logical thinking. And logical thinking is the process of clearly moving from one related thought to another. So in development, it is extremely important to start thinking logically early on. So first of all, you want to break down your problem. What is the task you are trying to achieve? Break that down. You break down your problem, your app idea, into its component parts, and then find a solution for each of those parts. And what I would like you to think about as well, and we will see that When we do get to the coding, again, I would like to say that we will be following the MAD agenda: design, develop, and distribute. So this week, design; next 2 weeks, develop; third week, distribute. The 3 stages that nearly all apps go to get them out there. So we want to find a solution, so remember that. But what I want you to think about is that there, in essence, almost an infinite amount of apps to develop. Coding, to an extent, is like building a house. There are almost an infinite variety of ways to build a house. In regards to that, there are going to be an infinite number of approaches. And for each app, there will be unique problems that you will encounter. There is no one way to develop an app. So for each app you will be developing, there will be unique problems that you will encounter. And that is why you do need to break down your app idea into its component parts and find a solution for each of those parts. And beginning to think logically early on will really help you out. And I generally approach problems in the following way. First of all, what are you attempting to do? Next, break that down into its component parts. And then tackle each of those components parts separately and build on your knowledge by solving. So if you encounter problems, it's always an idea to ask yourself some questions. How did you try to do something? What exactly are you trying to do? Why did you try to do it that way? And why do you think it went wrong? So let's get started with our first steps on our mobile app development journey. So we've covered the MAD process, talked about algorithms, talked about thinking logically, the 4 steps that we do want to cover in the MAD process. So again, breakdown of tasks, tackle each of those tasks separately, break them down even further. The more you break a problem down, the easier it is to solve. Overall, if you think about it, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I mean, it's much easier to think about it as a series of steps rather than you just having to do one huge jump of 1,000 miles. So first of all, get started with an app design document. So this is pretty much where you are going to begin your app. You start up with your app idea and begin extracting requirements from it. When you have your requirements, what is required for your app to function the way you want it to function, you can just start designing your app architecture and visual layout. So this is a document that will keep track of the design of your app as development continues. And you can keep adding to this document as you learn more about your app, how it's going to function, what problems face you getting your app out there, developing that functionality. So having a good design document that is in-depth and full of detail will help you later on. And what you want to have in this is device features. What features of a device will it be using? Functionality provided, how the app might work. This will provide you with a checklist of what will be needed before you have your minimum viable product. So first of all, having detail in this means you've less chance that you've left something out that you're going to have to include late in the game. This can be a huge headache and can lead to a lot of problems. And then second of all, think of your app design document as a blueprint. Now, I have mentioned that building an app, developing an app is similar to building a house, developing a house. No one starts building a house without a blueprint, and the same applies for an app. Your app design document is the blueprint of how you're going to develop your app. And the more detailed that is, the better it is, because again, you don't want to miss out on details. And to use the building a house analogy, not knowing what size the doors are going to be, ordering the wrong doors for that house. Now that's quite a basic analogy, but again, you do need a blueprint for your app, and this app design document can be that. So this is also all available in your members area, guys, in the toolkit. It is your Shaw Academy starter pack. So this is your app design document. Now, it's not very in-depth at the moment, and what I would advise is that you take it as a starting point and build on it from there. So let's talk a bit about creating this design document. and what is included. So start off with an elevator pitch. Has anyone heard of an elevator pitch and what is involved with an elevator pitch? Does anyone have any idea? Well, elevator pitches are used to get investors excited about your app idea. It's the problem your app will solve in a few short words. And the reason they're called elevator pitches is because imagine the situation. You are in an elevator with an investor. You want to pitch to them an idea in a couple of short words before they get off their own stuff. So it has to be concise and memorable to stick with your investor afterwards. Now, you don't necessarily have to be pitching to an investor, okay? I would like to stress that. But it is still a good idea, as what it will do, it will highlight the main functionality of your app. It will highlight the problem that your app will solve in a few short words. And again, you need to think about it in this way. If the problem your app is going to solve, if you cannot have that in a few short words, maybe it's too complex. 20 seconds to give your pitch, normally someone important. Very good, Ignacio. So if it's too long, is there too much in your app? Will people not want to use that app because there's too much there? They will be overwhelmed. They only want to use it for one thing rather than 10 or 15 different things. And again, you need to think about how long you can spend developing. If your elevator pitch is 5 minutes and it takes you 5 minutes to explain your app idea to someone, what exactly is the problem your app will solve? Maybe it isn't solving one problem. Maybe it's trying to solve too many problems. So it's important to keep in mind that you want the problem your app will solve quickly explainable to someone. You don't want it too large and convoluted because again, your app idea then becomes too diffuse, becomes too spread out, and it can be quite hard to develop with that. Now, there's nothing to say. That was nothing. That's not to say that you can't add in more and more with updates, but you do want to focus on getting a minimum viable product out there. This is all in the starter pack, exactly. So this is all in the starter pack that I have provided. So how will it be used? What makes your app stand out? And the features that it will have. An overview of the core features. So ask yourself, why would someone want to buy or download your app? What problem does your app solve? Because again, if we go back to the statistics right at the start of the lesson, users on average check their phone 150 times a day. 87% of users have their phone on them, or 80% all the time. And 50% or so check their phone straight away after waking up. Again, if you can't figure out what exactly the problem your app solves, you will not get into those 150 checks a day. You do want the user to check it for a specific purpose. And if there are too many problems that your app is trying to solve, a user may only want it for one problem and not use it as often. So set goals for your app. So set goals for your app. Again, figuring out the problem of your app, the primary functionality, and we'll be talking about that in a lot more detail in the next lesson. But set goals for your app and how we should be using it. And think carefully about the potential of your app, where it could be used, how often it could be used, who will be using it, and we'll be covering all these questions later on in different lessons. And then also, how much can you invest in the app? How much time and resources can you invest in this app? It's something to consider as well. Again, if you have previous development experience or you're just starting off developing, you need to weigh that up because you do want to get an app out there quite quickly. You don't want to spend a year trying to develop an app because the technology does change. The app ecosystem does update quite quickly. And doing this, keeping these ideas in mind, will help you develop in the best way possible. And it's all about developing in the best way possible. What similar apps do and how can I improve that? Very good, Ignacio. And that will actually be something we'll be talking about in the next lesson, where we'll be talking about who is your audience, figuring out who your users are, your audience, so that again we can invest our time and resources in the best way possible. So in summary, guys, today's lesson, we had a look at why are apps so important, having you thinking about constant usage and the constant fact that people have their phones on them constantly. So they're so important because people are able to access them at all times. You want to engage with people where they are the most, and that is on their devices. Starting your journey, we had a look at the MAD process and what's involved with that, logical thinking, algorithms, and then the first step in that with our app design problem. Mark, that's quite a good question. I'll answer that in a second. So congratulations, guys. You've taken the first step in mobile app development. Do attend all the lessons live to ask questions in real time and benefit the most. And we will have Q&A at the end now. And do email me at mobile.app@shawacademy.com and I'll reply to you as soon as possible. So the next lesson, this is quite important, guys. And because again, we talked about engaging with users in this lesson, trying to be our app being one of those reasons why a user would check their phone 150 times a day. We want our app to be one of those uses. So the next session is who is your audience, and figuring out who your users are and who your audience is allows you to develop in the smartest way possible, focus your efforts and targeting users who will use your app as much as possible. So we'll have a look at planning your app, who is your user, designing for audiences, and targeting your audience as well. So do attend all of the lessons live. And don't forget, guys, there is that 12-month membership prize during lesson 5. Get your toolkit for lessons 1 to 3 by completing each lesson live. And the toolkit. Students do often ask if we require them to buy books to support their learning, and the answer is no. We do provide full toolkits to support your learning experience. So toolkit will include the starter pack, which is jam-packed with incredibly useful information, webinar slides for every lesson, because let's face it, you can't write everything down. And they also include summary notes, which as implied summarize all the main points from each lesson. And finally, I will be uploading bonus videos as well. Would be great if you could engage with us on social media, either at Facebook, just Shaw Academy, or at Shaw Academy as well. And we do interact with each other as much as possible. And it would be fantastic if you could all get involved in the weekly challenge, which is, why would someone want to download and use your app? So go to Shaw Academy's Facebook page, use the hashtag ShawMadIdea and tell us why your app will be successful. And search hashtag ShawMadApp to find past examples. So hashtag ShawMadIdea. So we are on the Q&A, and I will see you back for lesson 2. Who is your audience? So we have a lot of ones coming in there, a lot of ones. It seems to be overwhelmingly ones. Brilliant stuff. So Q&A time now, guys. Do get asking your questions. I'm going to take a very quick drink of water. Quite a good input there from Jennifer. I guess it's a good idea to check there aren't already a lot of apps that do the same thing as your idea. We're actually going to be talking about that at the start of the next lesson, Jennifer. So we're going to be talking about that at the start of the next lesson. And it's quite a good idea. It's not necessarily a bad thing if there are a lot of apps out there that do the same thing as your idea. You can improve on them and see where those ideas fall down and how you can make a better app from their mistakes. Louis, there, thanks, love the first session. Can't wait to get started, start coding. Bigger market and cheaper. That is correct, Ignatia. That is correct. No problem at all, Dominique. I'm glad you enjoyed the lesson. We will be working with Java concepts, Michael. So we will be working with Java concepts to get everyone introduced to the coding process. We'll be talking about the technology that we're going to be using to develop the app in the next lesson. I'll be talking about that. Remember, we are following the MAD agenda. So again, this week we're going to be talking about design. Extremely, extremely important. And then next 2 weeks after that, we will be developing. And then we'll be moving on from there. Is it very different to develop an app for iOS and Android? It can be quite different, so don't worry about it. It is quite different to develop for different ones, so I will be explaining that. Don't worry about it. Would it be easy to partner with other apps with an ad? You could definitely do that, no problem. Are there certain types of apps which are more difficult to create for beginners? So I wouldn't worry about that at the moment, Joe, but do keep it in mind that if you're trying to do an e-commerce website and have a whole app with shopping baskets, payments, everything like that, that is more complex than developing a to-do list. You definitely could create your own radio app. What is your opinion on demanding intrusive permissions that applications require to run? Lewis, I will be talking about that in later lessons as well. That's quite important. Again, you don't want to have unnecessary permissions in your app idea. What kind of app should we make these days? Really, it is an app that you want to develop, but also we'll be looking at in the next lesson how we can think of our app idea, focus it in on an audience, spend our time and resources on developing for users to provide them with the best user experience, and rather than wasting our time and resources trying to develop for everyone under the sun. How dangerous or practical is it to create an app that fits two or more categories, such as corporate and facilitator? So, as I said on that slide, there are no instructions. Those are guidelines that can help you to figure out what function your app fulfills. But again, there are no rigid rules in that. Can a substantial app be developed individually, or do we need a team of 2 or 3 maybe? An individual developer can be quite successful, so I wouldn't worry about that. Do not worry about the software that we'll be developing with. I'll cover all of that in the next lesson, so don't worry about that. If the app you're developing performs a similar task to another app, but better, how do you get your app recognized if the other app already has traction? So that can be quite difficult, but then if your app is performing the job better, well then it should get users. People will start giving it good reviews, which will make it go up in the App Store. How do you find the right idea you're looking for? Jason will be talking about that in the next lesson, so don't worry about that. You spoke about an app generating billions, but there are so many free apps. How do they generate income and profit? Make sure to attend lesson 7, where we'll be talking about making money in mobile. So we'll be talking about making money in mobile. Are there any copyright issues to know when creating apps? I would not worry about that at the moment. It is very difficult to patent or copyright code. Very, very difficult. You have to patent or copyright a process. So the only copyright issues you do need to worry about are logos and branding and things like that. You do not need to have some sort of background for this course, so don't worry in regards to that. You will not need to buy software, so don't worry about that. Does it cost money to publish an app on the App Store? There is a developer license fee, which we'll be talking about in publishing your app. Brilliant stuff. Are there media outlets that make it easier to get your app used? You can. There are a variety of advertising platforms out there to get your app idea out there. But again, you may not want advertisements, because if a user is going to your app from an ad, maybe they don't even want to use your ad. They may just check it. And we will not be covering Windows app development, because it has a very, very small user equipment. All of the lessons will be 1 hour long, so not to worry, 1 hour long. What is the average lifespan of apps? Very good question. Hopefully you will be able to have an app that could be up there for 2-3 years, which would be quite useful. How long does it take to develop an app on average? There is no average app development time because each app is unique to a certain extent. So the problems you face, the way you approach those problems will be unique as well. Again, if you wanted to develop Facebook on your own, that could take a long time. While if you wanted to develop a simple to-do list, that could just take a week. So there are a variety of different apps out there, and they all do take a different amount of time to develop. And again, it's the amount of time and resources you put into them as well. Now we'll be talking about how to integrate device camera into our app, so not to worry as well. Can we publish an app in the Google Store and earn money out of it? You can, of course, and we will be talking about that later on. What if your app wants to help people recognize logos by scanning them? The logos would be copyrighted. They would be copyrighted, so that's something to keep in mind. How do you know your app needs improvement? You can keep an eye on user reviews, ratings, ask a user to do a survey, things like that. Test as well is a huge one. So guys, I am going to leave it there. I don't want to keep you all too long. So I'll see you back for lesson 2, Who's Your Audience, where we'll be learning how to figure out our audience, target them correctly, figure out our users as well, which is extremely important so that we can focus our time and resources wisely and invest them wisely rather than wasting them developing for too large an amount of users where very few will use them. So any questions, please do email me at mobile.app@shawacademy.com and I will be back to you. You will receive a 24-hour reminder for lesson 2 and then a 12-hour reminder and a 1-hour reminder as well. So I will see you back for lesson 2. Until then, guys.